Welcome back to Bombastic Nation and Ting and Ting and Ting. I'm Mr. Giant and I'm back with some more vibe for all you. And somebody suggested that I watch the Hannibal series, you know what I mean? And thing. I've heard of Hannibal, but I don't know much about it, so I'm really intrigued and excited to see what's going on and thing, you know what I mean? And we're gonna get into it, man. The first part is Hannibal. It's a Road to Rome, Hannibal Part One, Second Punic War. So we're gonna go into this one and see what's going on with Hannibal here and thing. Hey, if you subscribe and you're not getting notifications, just click that notification bell. If you're not yet subscribed and you're subscribing, make sure you hit the notification bell when you subscribe so you get to know when I'm, sending all these videos and thing. And I remember every now and then there's gonna be a surprise, bloop, an added video of something or the other that intrigued me. But let's go ahead and YouTube and simmer, see what Hannibal is all about. Excited. The result of the war in Sicily had not broken the spirit of that commander. He regarded himself as unconquered. Polybius, 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 Polybius. All right, there we go. Let's go. Let's go.
After General Hasdrubal the Fair was assassinated by a Celtic slave, 26-year-old Hannibal was elected as the new Carthaginian commander. The young general immediately made plans to invade Rome, but he couldn't begin the campaign before strengthening Carthage's control over the Iberian Peninsula. So Hannibal went to work. He launched two highly successful campaigns in 221 and 220 BC, extending Carthaginian influence beyond the Tagus River. But while on the return route to New Carthage, Hannibal was taken by surprise by a coalition of Iberian tribes. Led by the Carpetani tribe, the Iberians assembled a large army. They blocked Hannibal's path and fortified their position against the Tagus River, then waited for the Carthaginian general to attack. Here, Hannibal showed his military genius for the first time. Instead of attacking the Iberians head-on, he erected his own fortified camp and waited. By day's end, his scouts found a river crossing to the southeast. During the wee hours of the night, Hannibal ordered a small contingent to stay in the camp and keep all the campfires burning, creating the illusion that the whole Carthaginian army was still encamped. Meanwhile, he led his army on a swift flanking maneuver further up the river. By sunrise the next day, Hannibal was behind the Iberian position, feigning retreat towards New Carthage. Thinking that the Carthaginians were retreating, Iberians rushed to intercept them. And once they were midstream, Hannibal sprung his trap and unleashed his cavalry. Iberian infantrymen, chest deep in the fast-flowing river, couldn't offer much resistance and were cut down with ease by the Carthaginian cavalry charge.
Oh wow!
Those who managed to cross
Strategy
were trampled by the elephants. By now, the Iberian army lost all cohesion, and the mass of tribal warriors started fleeing. Hannibal ordered his army to pursue them across the river, completely routing the enemy. On the Tagus River, Hannibal had his first major victory, but Rome took notice. Wanting to stop Hannibal's expansion, the Romans made their presence felt. Already allied with the wealthy and powerful city of Sagunto, Rome declared it their protectorate, an act that Hannibal perceived as a violation of the treaty signed by the two great powers in 225 BC, which divided the Iberian Peninsula along the Ebro River into Carthaginian and Roman spheres of influence. A sworn enemy of Rome, it didn't take long before Hannibal acted. He marched on Sagunto and besieged the city. In 219 BC, Carthaginian army reached the outskirts of Sagunto. The city was heavily fortified, situated atop steep slopes and cliffs. high above the surrounding plain. Saguntines requested aid from Rome, but the Romans were busy fighting the Illyrians. Nevertheless, with provisions stockpiled, Sagunto was prepared. Besieging it would not be easy. Hannibal installed a blockade around the entire city and placed most of his force at the western end. Saguntines stubbornly kept pushing every Carthaginian assault back, but the siege went on for months, and the many assaults gradually wore down portions of the wall. Eventually, the defenders had to abandon their outer defences and form up behind the inner wall. Slowly and relentlessly, Hannibal's army made progress. And after 8 brutal months, the Saguntines made their last stand at the citadel. Soon after, the city fell. Inhabitants that survived the siege were either killed or sold into slavery.
Slavery. Wow.
After the fall of Sagunto, Rome demanded justice for what they perceived was the violation of the treaty, and claiming that Sagunto was in the Roman sphere of influence, according to the treaty, they asked Carthage to hand over.
You know, back in the day, it seems like whenever they plunder a city or country or whatever, they outright enslave the people. Now, in modern times, it's kind of different. It's more of an economic type slavery. They plunder, and then they plunder the natural resources and things. Yeah, even though they did that there, you know what I mean? But the people aren't in outright slavery. It's just like an economic slavery where they get paid little, you know what I mean? And they kept to a certain standard where they keep being the worker bees. And the only ones that usually break through the ceiling is the ones that are usually susceptible to bribes, or, you know, doing the bidding of those that are, you know, taking. You see, like for instance, it's kind of like the Cold War, right? Like in my country, for example, before, friends with America and Britain. During the Revolution, friends with Russia and Cuba. You know what I mean? And whoever is influencing on the outside have a direct effect on how the people live on the inside. You know what I'm saying? Even though there's the Cold War was a lot of outside sort of vibes affecting the people because of which side they think the people are on. And, you know, like I always say, just because a government is on one side of the two powers doesn't mean the people are. It's just that when you get to a point where you are totally dominated, you feel helpless and you can't do nothing. Until anger, actually, helplessness is replaced by anger, and then we have revolutions and stuff. And I'm talking from a small country perspective. Not, it may be the same in a large country, but I'm from a small island, talking from a small island perspective. But you know, they took over this city, and they were sold into slavery. Is it like a punishment or an economic move? Could be both.
Stood by their general, and by the end of the year, the Second Punic War began. Hannibal wintered in New Carthage, preparing for the upcoming campaign. He placed his brother, Hasdrubal, in charge of Iberia with
Nepotism.
15,000 troops and 21 elephants. along with a fleet
It's
of
still
ships
prevalent
to protect the
today.
coastline. To break possible tribal allegiances, around 15,000 Iberian infantry were swapped for 15,000 African infantry, who were more reliable, sending the Iberians to Carthage and Libya to bolster defences against a possible Roman landing. And in the spring of 218 BC, with the full support from the Senate, Hannibal marched out of New Carthage with 54,000 infantry and 8,000 cavalry, dividing his army into 3 columns. But beyond the Ebro, tribes allied to Rome were hostile to the Carthaginians, and it took Hannibal about 2 months to pacify the region. He placed around 10,000 troops under the command of Hanno, ordering him to establish a line of defence on the Ebro against possible incursions into Carthaginian territory. With 38,000 infantry, 7,000 cavalry, and 37 elephants left at his disposal, Hannibal crossed the mountains and encamped on the other side of the Pyrenees. Meanwhile, the Romans divided their forces. Their plan was to send Consul Publius Cornelius Scipio to intercept Hannibal in Iberia. Simultaneously, Consul Tiberius Sempronius Longus sailed to Sicily with the intent of attacking Carthage itself, if Scipio managed to stop Hannibal's advance. Additional Roman forces were left to guard the recently conquered Gallic lands in the Po Valley, a region the Romans called Cisalpine Gaul. Back at the foot of the Pyrenees Mountains, Hannibal laid the groundwork for the invasion. Rather than fighting his way towards Rome, he did everything to avoid conflict with the Gallic tribes, mostly paying them for free passage through their territory, promising that his only interest is to fight Rome. Moreover, Carthaginian messengers returning from the Po Valley assured Hannibal that the Gallic tribes there would welcome him, and that they already began hostilities against Rome in anticipation of his arrival. This was welcomed news for Hannibal, because he knew the Po Valley could provide the manpower and act as a staging point for operations into Roman territory. As Hannibal approached the River Rhone, Scipio's army disembarked at Massalia to resupply while on their way to Iberia. The Roman general knew that Hannibal crossed the Pyrenees, but he wrongly estimated that the Carthaginian general was still far from the Rhone. In truth, Hannibal's army was only 4 days' march away from Massalia. Hannibal rested his army for 3 days in hostile territory and began preparations to cross the Rhone. With the Roman army just 4 days away, Hannibal wanted to avoid a set-piece battle with the Gauls, eager to press on towards the Italian peninsula as soon as possible. But on the opposite riverbank, encamped was the army of the Caveres tribe, a Roman ally. They gathered all their boats and built a barrier on the riverbank in preparation to contest the Carthaginian crossing. But Hannibal devised a cunning plan.
There you go again.
On the third night, under the cover of darkness, he sent a flanking detachment under the command of Hanno, son of Bomilcar, some 40 kilometers, 25 miles, north. Hanno crossed the river.
See, I wonder if it had modern technology, because it seems he's using the same tactic. You know, he's flanking them by going to cross at another area and getting behind them. So you think they would be prepared for something like that?
River and rested his troops for 1 day. On
They
the
were
second
already
night
in
after
there.
leaving the Carthaginian
They're like
camp,
rangers.
Hanno's detachment again moved during the night, eventually deploying behind the Caveres camp at dawn. The trap was set. Early next morning,
You know,
Hanno used his smoke
there's got to be a
signal
lot of
Hannibal.
like guesswork. You know what I mean? Because he's waiting for them to sit behind there before he could start his attack, and then for them to come from behind. So I wonder. I guess he's sending off horses, riders in the night and stuff to say, well, they're encamped there now. Quite possible. Yeah.
To start crossing the Rhone. As the Carthaginian vessels were lowered into the massive river, the Caveres army formed a line on the opposite bank. Hannibal was one of the first to cross, to the roars and cheers of his men on the western bank. As the Carthaginians started disembarking on the eastern riverbank, Hanno sent a part of his force to loot and destroy the Caveres camp, while he proceeded to charge at the Gauls near the river. The Caveres were stunned by the flanking maneuver, and they began fleeing the field in panic.
He didn't even need a whole
They
lot.
cope
Just
with Hannibal's
the-
perfectly synchronized attacks. With the Gauls scattered, the battle was soon over, and the Carthaginians hastily proceeded to cross the river.
Wow.
Most of Hannibal's troops crossed the Rhone by the end of the day, while it took another day to get the elephants across the river. While the Carthaginian army gathered on the eastern bank, friendly Gallic messengers from the tribes in the Po Valley arrived, warning Hannibal that a Roman fleet is anchored nearby. Hannibal sent his scouts to locate Scipio's army, and incredibly, not long after, his Numidian scouts stumbled into a Roman Gallic scouting party. Both generals now knew each other's whereabouts. Scipio quickly moved north to confront Hannibal, but by the time the Romans reached the crossing point a few days later, only an empty Carthaginian camp was left behind. Hannibal had no time to waste. He had to reach the Alps before winter. But as Hannibal's army began their journey over the Alps, trouble was brewing in Iberia. Scipio placed his brother Gnaeus Cornelius Scipio Calvus in charge of leading the army into Iberia, while he headed back to the Po Valley to assume command of the Roman troops there and prepare for the Carthaginian invasion. Scipio Calvus, now in charge of the invasion force, disembarked at Emporia. The Greek trading cities and the Iberian tribes in the region welcomed the Romans. But even prior to the arrival of Roman troops, the Carthaginians began to lose control over the conquered region, as Hanno's force was not large enough to conduct offensive operations. What's worse, Hanno only learned about the Roman arrival when Scipio Calvus was well on his way towards the Ebro River. He sent word to Hasdrubal, who began marching north with 8,000 infantry and 1,000 cavalry. But instead of waiting for Hasdrubal, Hanno marched out with 10,000 troops to meet the 20,000-strong Roman army. Unsurprisingly, Scipio Calvus easily crushed the Carthaginians, killing 6,000 and capturing 2,000 troops,
Wow.
with Hanno himself. Once Hasdrubal arrived, he didn't have enough troops to meet the Romans in battle, so he launched fast-moving raids along the coast. Carthaginian raiders killed many Roman sailors as they were foraging, reducing the effectiveness of the Roman fleet by half. Nevertheless, Rome now had full control over Iberia north of the Ebro River, a serious blow to the Carthaginian war effort. Moreover, northern Iberia would become a base of operations for Roman incursions into Carthaginian territory south of the Ebro River. Meanwhile, having marched his forces over the Alps, Hannibal would soon turn the Italian peninsula into a war zone, in a campaign that would elevate him to a general of legendary status.
Alright. My man's got some strategic vibes going on here, you know what I mean? I'm quite interested in seeing where the rest of this is going, man. I hope you guys watch this with me. I'm enjoying this, you know what I mean? I'm gonna leave a link in the description for this video so you can go check it out, check out the channel, see what else they have going on there besides Hannibal series, you know what I mean? But thank you for suggesting this. This is quite interesting, and of course it's way back because it's BC, and then we coming up. All right, man, you guys take care of each other. All right, cool runnings.